The Institute of Internal Auditors presents All Things Internal Audit. In this episode, Mike Jacka and Yvette Adams talk about one of the most important and often overlooked risk areas, human capital management. From talent shortages and upskilling to culture, fraud, and AI, they unpack how people strategy connects directly to organizational success. Hear how internal auditors can assess workforce risks, build better relationships with HR, and ensure that governance around both people and technology keeps pace with change.
Welcome, Yvette.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Let's start with a nice simple one. What is human capital management to you, and why is it so critical to the organization?
It's about people. But the term human capital management is just a fancy way of saying it's how an organization takes care of its people. So it can cover anything from hiring to training to keeping people engaged to helping them grow and progress in their careers. But the reason why it's important is it's not so much about HR anymore. It's about how people impact strategy. And it's important for an organization to keep that in mind when they're talking about their people and how they're using their people in their companies. So, it's interesting when I was doing some research here, I saw that the IIA's Risk in Focus report puts human capital risk right up there with cybersecurity and business continuity as one of the top global risks, with things like talent shortages, hybrid work, changing expectations. How we manage our people has become make or break for companies.
And I think that's a great point. I mean, human capital management, it's not just an internal audit. You see from every walk of life, every C-suite person, they know people are the important things. But you made 2 points in there that I just really loved. One of which is it's not just HR. That became I remember the good old days when we called them personnel, and then it became HR. And so for an organization to look at capital management, they have to look beyond that and how it's all working. And the other point you made that I really liked is it's taking care of people. And so often it's very easy to fall into the trap of numbers and people, and you forget you're trying to take care of the ones. You're trying to take care of the ones coming in. You're trying to take care of the ones that you already have. So you kind of hit this a little bit, but let's talk in terms of what are the big risks, and in particular, what are the workforce issues that can really impact the organization's ability to achieve what it wants to get done.
So some of the major risks would be losing top talent and having skill gaps. But beyond that, it can go a little bit deeper. It can include things like operational breakdowns. You could have reputational risk. You could even have compliance risks. So, for example, your company might have a strategy that they're trying to execute on, and they have an initiative they're going after. Well, if they don't either upskill their people or hire the right people with those skills, it can actually tank the initiative. And then also people become frustrated in what they're doing. They can become unproductive. And then it opens an opportunity for fraud risk, execution risk, and getting things right for the operations. So it goes deeper even than just, having the right skill set.
One of the first, you used a phrase I love, and it's kind of a buzzword, but nonetheless, it's a fantastic word, and that's upskill.
Mhm.
What I saw just in an internal audit, finding the time, opportunity, and resources to upskill our internal auditors to get the work done was a challenge. And
Mhm.
of course, now we can, throw around fancy buzzwords like AI and everything else. How do we keep up on it? It's all about upskilling and finding the time. And I would think that is an issue for organizations to find, okay, we got some great people. How do we upskill them? What do we do?
Mhm. Well, I'll start from the way I work with upskilling with my team. It's not I have a one time a year event where I'm going to focus on upskill. It's actually part of our day to day, our week to week, our month to month, whatever that looks like. So for my team, I actually will bring things to them in our daily stand up meetings, just little nuggets of how we can use something differently or an idea that came to mind, because those little opportunities to highlight something that they can lean into and maybe research a little bit more and start to use on an incremental basis, in my opinion, is more impactful than a one-day seminar once a year or whatever that looks like. I think for the rest of the organization, even outside of internal audit, then upskilling, you have to be aware of what your strategy is for your company. Where do you want your company to go? And because of that, what type of skills are these people going to need in order to do that? You can hire people with those skills, but in my opinion, it's a lot more beneficial to leverage the people that we have. We know what kind of work they do. We know we can rely on the work they do. Let's make sure they have the skills to bring to the table. And it's a win win for both the employees and the company because the company has people they know and trust. And the people that are working there have an opportunity to grow themselves. And it's a motivating thing for them. It brings them job satisfaction.
I think more in terms of internal audit, but it's true organization wide. We have so much talent. What are we doing to keep them? It's just like in sales. It costs more to get a new customer than to keep the current one. Well, the same thing is true. I used to tell the people that worked for me, my job is to make you better. My second job is to then keep you. And if I can't keep you, I don't care. I've still made you better, but I want to make an atmosphere and an opportunity for you to be that much better. And so, kind of going broader from what you said, also, one, does internal audit know? And two, does the organization even know what their strategy is when it comes to talent management?
From my experience, there's a lot of focus on making sure internal audit is aware of the company's strategy because part of what we do is evaluate how's the rest of the organization doing in terms of that strategy. So I think the internal audit is aware and we can be a key resource in order to evaluate our managers, is the company getting the talent in order to help drive that strategy. And then as in terms of internal audit, yes, I do think that internal audit shops are aware of what their strategy needs to be in order to support the company. I think that our seat at the table in order to understand the company's strategy can also ensure that we bring in the talent that can audit those functions or that strategy. So then we can keep our staffing assessment up to date in order to say, do we have the people with those skills that can support the company strategy?
As I've traveled around and talked to people, the thing I see so often when it comes to this is one, organizations may not have really articulated their strategy, which there's an instant spot for internal audit to help. Second, it may be that internal audit does not know what it is. There's that issue. And the third one, when internal audit departments put together their own strategies, how often do they have that included? And I always think of a line I heard from somebody that I will misquote as I often do, but they said, you always look at what the top 10 things for an organization is. And one of them they say is our number one priority is people. And then it's number 10 on the list. So, so there's an obvious miscommunication going on there.
Yep.
Okay, so let's drill down into it because this is something when I worked with Farmers Insurance, we ran into. We were trying to get into HR and trying to do things. And it was amazing the first times we went in, the pushback we had that HR said, you can't see this stuff, it's secure. We wormed our way in, but I was wondering how you see what's the best way for a department to come into HR specifically and human capital in general to get this work done. How do you worm your way in?
Honestly, it's about building relationships. You can't do anything in the internal audit shop without building relationships because when you build trusted relationships with people and they know that you're here to help them and they can trust that you are going to help them, then it makes a world of difference. So I build relationships with my audit clients. And then we're also supported by our internal audit charter. We ensure here that our internal audit charter shows what we have the authority to be able to look at so that if we do have to rely and lean back on that, we can bring that to the table as needed. So we make it clear that, hey, we are authorized by the company to see this information. And at the end of the day, we want to help. We want to help the organization with the large picture.
And I think audit departments that have this kind of trouble will have trouble everywhere because the number one thing for internal audit is about relationships, and it's everywhere in the organization and every level. It's from the CEO to the janitorial staff, having relationships with everyone so that they know they can trust you. I like the idea of, okay, we have to have an audit charter. I will say again, in our experience, we did our best to never fall back on that.
I
Go ahead.
totally agree. To
Yeah,
me, first do the relationship. If you have to, let's fall back on the charter. But
exactly.
there are ways that you can build relationships with people. Um, one of the things, and I know it's not popular, and we've talked about a little bit at the beginning, hybrid is a thing, right? But honestly, being in the halls with people, being on site with people is a natural way to be able to start to build relationships through even the water cooler talk, or I'm at the coffee machine and I'm having a discussion there. And then being in person at meetings so that when the meeting ends, you can actually have just a casual dialogue with somebody. And then for me, I set up regular touch base meetings with my audit clients so that I can have a conversation. We can talk business, but that we can also build a connection on a personal level.
We won't go too far into that remote auditing thing because I got in trouble with a blog post I wrote a while ago. Uh, but the personal touch is so important. I will a line my wife taught me, and my wife is very smart, except when she decided to marry me. But which when I first started at Farmers Insurance, and she started at Blue Cross at the same time, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and she told me within the first week, I don't care who walks down the hall. I'll say hi. If it's the CEO, I'll say hi. And it's very amazing. It's a great thing to teach new auditors to say, you can say hi to anybody.
Yep,
They may not talk to you, but they may. And so that's a good thing.
exactly.
Gotten a little far afield here, but I mean, it's a key to the success of internal audit. I know.
Exactly.
Let's get all the way back down to now human capital and really kind of into the weeds, but the details. But let's go with the frauds. What are common frauds or big errors that you have seen happen when it comes to this type of thing?
First, there's ghost employees. Ghost employees are fake employees that have been added to payroll. So someone with access to the payroll system sets them up, and then money ends up going to a fraudulent account. So what can internal audit do? Cross-check payroll records to HR records, and then you can look for duplicate bank accounts, duplicate addresses, that kind of thing can reveal that kind of thing that's going on. Payroll fraud. So things like unauthorized pay changes, or you could have bonus manipulation. So what we can do then is make sure that duties are properly segregated into approvals and people actually taking that work to the system. You could have misclassification of workers. Sometimes people are labeled as contractors or exempt employees because that helps them to avoid paying some benefits. However, there's regulatory rules around that. And so internal audit should be comparing job roles and classifications to contracts and what the job expectations are, and aligning that to how people are labeled either as exempt, non-exempt, or contractors. You could have misuse of training budgets. So funds might be spent on things that don't align with your business goals and strategies. And so, of course, we as internal auditors can review expenses for any area that we're looking at, look at vendor contracts. We might want to make sure the training actually supports workforce development. And with any remote work, verifying identity and managing access is more important than ever, especially with artificial intelligence that we've talked a little bit about. I've heard of deep fakes going all the way through the hiring process, and that's a scary thing.
Wow, that's amazing. While we're talking AI, what else? We're all still learning what it is and what it does. I think we're still all making it up as we go along. But any thoughts on how internal audit can be involved when it comes to AI and HR?
I think that people always have to remember that artificial intelligence needs to be supported by human intelligence.
Yeah.
You can't have an effective artificial intelligence unless you're applying your human intelligence on top of that. And funny enough, I actually heard somebody say, well, that's why Microsoft called it co-pilot, because there's a pilot in the seat.
Mm.
So we want to look at what is the governance around artificial intelligence in our company. Do we have a standard? Where is the human in the process, and those kinds of things?
Because we talked about the frauds and those types of things, and that is the kind of thing that auditors can grasp easily. I mean, it's my background was in accounting, so it's accounting type stuff. But when you start getting to the soft skills, let's take employee engagement. Everybody knows that right now the numbers continue to be horrible when it comes to employee engagement. How does audit get into doing things like engagement, ethics, culture, those kind of reviews?
So, audit can play a really important role here. We can take a look at the company's strategy in terms of ethics and how they are motivating their employees. We can see even what companies have disclosed, that what they say they're going to do in terms of DEI or ESG, some of those buzzwords. So, when the company says they're doing something, how is that playing out? You can have conversations with people and interview employees. Like, you might have your senior leadership who says one thing and thinks that things are going on this way for their company, but yet you might have a conversation and some dialogue with employees, everyday employees, and find something different. And if there's a disconnect, we probably need to raise that. So you can do it through conversations, interviews with senior executives versus employees. Oftentimes, then companies will also do surveys with their employees. We can look at those surveys and we can see, okay, are there any trends here? How is the survey conducted? How is it presented? Is there vast silence? Because if there's vast silence, maybe that's an indicator of something. So start to think about what you're seeing and maybe what you're not seeing in some of those results. And then you can also look at things like exit interviews. When people are exiting the company, what is it they're saying on the way out the door? If your company's not holding exit interviews, then we can certainly thought that as something that could be good in order to start to drive, hey, there are some things that need to be addressed here. But yes, employee engagement, upskilling, what's the tone at the top when it comes to that? And then is the company doing what their intent is?
Yeah. Tone at the top, and does the messaging match that? And does the actions of those below match what the tone at the top claims it is saying?
Yep.
It's another one of those where I believe the relationships are a big part of it. And we could say that about every single one. The example I think of, I was doing training for a large company, a large audit staff, and it was just the supervisors and managers, and I had 50 people in there. So you can imagine the size of the audit staff. And just training them and talking to that audit staff, all of a sudden, what boiled up is what the leadership of audit did not know: the anger, the frustration. There had been changes that made no sense. So, what was supposed to be 4 days of training on supervision turned into including one full day of this is what's wrong with what's going on. So, I mean, it was kind of a structured situation. If internal audit is in a position to be doing training, for example, we used to do training on ethics, that's where these conversations can come up and you start to feel it. One other we had was, for a while, we would visit every single claims office. I think it was 50, 75 claims offices throughout the US. We had a large group to do it. The chief claims officer wanted to report on what the culture was in every one of those claims offices because he couldn't tell throughout the country how it was. Some were great, some weren't. And it was kind of not a part of the report, but a part of the information we provided to give them that. So that turned into that piece of it.
And I think it's fantastic when management really cares and they want to hear that, because they're the ones that are going to make change in their culture if they're willing to listen.
Debriefing of surveys can be an interesting challenge because we were involved in some one time where the person doing the debriefing focused on one person who was complaining. We knew the history and knew they were a complainer. So not that they needed to be ignored, but it became so focused on that that it swayed and tilted the way everything went. What do you think are going to be the big risks, the big issues, the things that we've got coming up in human capital, coming up in the next 2, 5, 10 years? Well, 10 years, nobody knows what's going on. The next 2 to 5 years.
Well, I do think that we have a need to upskill, and it comes back to the technology side and the human side of these tools. So we need to be constantly focused on the fast changing pace of technology and what we can do to keep up. That means learning more about data ethics, artificial intelligence governance, models, how we can validate models. And then we need to understand how all of these things have an impact on the human, on the person. So, how are these things affecting hiring people? How are these things affecting promoting people? Is it affecting the overall employee experience? And if so, how? These are things we need to keep a pulse on. It's not just about technology and that risk that comes with keeping up with technology, but it's how the technology affects the people. And it's critical that we have that multidisciplinary approach.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, it's terms like data ethics and the rules around AI and all of that are just huge things. And I do believe I'm going to go a little broader here again, but I do believe we have to be very aware of the broader impacts of what's going on with AI. For example, right now, there's so much discussion about the energy that's used in providing that value. Okay, when the organization is involved with it, what does that say about the ethics of the organization? Have they thought about that? And now back to the human capital. If there has been a decision made, do the people know about it? And do they understand why the company's going this way, why it's not going this way, how it's using the information that's available to talk about what is the right thing for the organization to do to not only ensure its own goals are met, but it is still I'll call it a service to humanity, which I think people need to be.
I think that this technology brings a lot of efficiency and insight to the table, but it comes with risks. So you've got the algorithmic bias, you've got data privacy concerns, you've got, like you had talked about, that general lack of transparency around how decisions are made. So although technology, artificial intelligence can make things smarter, faster, there has to be that solid governance framework in order to ensure fairness, accountability. Again, I like to say artificial intelligence has to be governed with human intelligence.
Yeah. Well, and bringing it straight to the human capital aspect of it again, it's do people understand it when you speak of upskill or being upskilled in a way that they will understand how it all works and what is the impact on the employees.
A lot of people say, am I going to lose my job? And someone I heard say, well, yes, but you're going to lose your job as you know it. If you were to look years and years ago, then we had a bunch of people doing other things. I work at a bank. And so you had a bunch of people in the teller line. And back in the day, before I was even a banker there, then people were writing in general ledgers, right? Well, we're a far cry from that, but you still need people in order to do the work. It's just different work.
I'm old enough to remember when automation was going to put us all out of work. Well, automation took over the busy work, and now AI can take over the new busy work.
I think it's exciting because honestly, I think when we can leverage our brains and use them, it's actually more fun. It's more fun than doing some of those busy work. To me, it's more enjoyable to be able to analyze, think through things instead of doing some of that other busy work.
And I will tell you, I had auditors who enjoyed that. On the other hand, I had auditors work for me who didn't like that and wanted the busy work.
Oh, that's true. To each their own.
Those are the ones who will be searching for new jobs.
Yep. Yep.
Is there something in particular you kind of wish I'd asked, or something else you want to throw into this whole mix? Or this one's wide open. Anything you think you want to throw in about human capital?
We talked a little bit about employee engagement, culture, and how that crosses into the HR territory. That needs to start with the values versus behaviors. And I know we talked a little bit about that, but you can look at things like the company's mission statement, what their values are, what is their code of conduct, and then compare that to the way decisions are made, how things are communicated to employees. Are the policies that are being made, are they enforced? And are they consistent among all of the departments? And that will tell you a lot. We've talked a little bit about talking to people, but some of the things we can ask is, do you feel comfortable raising concerns? Does leadership model ethical behavior? And then again, you can compare some of those answers across the board and then just see how decisions are made. Are decisions being made properly within the construct of whatever the company has determined decisions should be made? Are things escalated appropriately so that they get to the right levels? Are governance bodies kept in the loop? Are things happening over here that maybe governance bodies don't know about? Do our meeting minutes show that risks are being addressed, that risks are being talked about, and that they're being addressed and or avoided? And then you can look at incentives and performance metrics because often people will respond with what we incentivize them with. So are we rewarding ethical behavior? Are we aware of the risks when it comes to our incentives and how we're incentivizing people? Are we pushing people to meet a number at all costs? Are incentives misaligned and such that they drive risky behavior? Those are some things that I think that we need to be aware of and consider. Metrics are important. Again, what we measure is important. Some of the things that we can measure in this space are turnover rates, pay equity, training and development, health and safety, depending on what type of company you're into. That might be even more critical than others if you're construction or whatever that looks like. But audit's role is growing here, and we need to make sure that what's being reported is not only accurate, but trustworthy and drives the right behavior.
Well, I want to thank you for your time. I think it's been a lot of good information. I hope everybody else enjoys it, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Ready to lead with confidence? Join the IIA's 2025 RISE Virtual Conference on December 5th, all online. Earn up to 7.2 CPEs while diving into resilience, innovation, strategy, and ethics with today's top audit leaders. Save your spot now at theiaa.org. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and rate us. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also catch other episodes on YouTube or at theiaa.org. That's THEIIA.org.